Bibliophiles of the internet, my name is Adriana and today I'm here to talk to you about the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I first read the 5th season in December of last year and it completely rocked my world. I just reread this to get ready for the sequel, which I can already tell you is so freaking good. This story is about a world called the Stillness, which is experiencing its latest and most dire season. A season is like an apocalyptic period of time when the world is experiencing massive shortages, starvation, bouts of disease, and even death. Basically, everyone is at the mercy of nature as the world is destroyed and remade, but the planet itself usually stays intact. However, this time they may not be so fortunate. There are also people known as Orojins who have the ability to sense the movements of the earth and to manipulate the earth and rock using only their will and raw energy. In its official capacity, Orogeny is used to do things like quell earthquakes and minor shakes to keep the stillness stable and so that seasons can be avoided for as long as possible. But orogeny is also connected to an orojin's emotions and it can be used to disrupt and destroy the earth as well. Because of that, orojins are viewed as extremely volatile, dangerous, undesirable, and in need of controlling, which is why so many people look down on them and why so many orojins try to hide what they are. What's more, if an orojin is discovered and they display enough raw power and control, they will be tracked down by guardians and forcibly taken to this academy called the Fulcrum. At the Fulcrum, guardians teach young orojins discipline and control so that they can use their orogeny safely, but more importantly so that they can eventually use their abilities for the benefit of the stillness. The story cycles through several points of view, but it really begins with a woman, an orojin named Asun, whose youngest child, Uche, has just been murdered by his father, most likely because he started to display signs of orogeny. Asun discovers Uche's body and learns that her husband, Jija, has fled their home and taken her only remaining child with him. So amidst the confusion of a new season beginning, Asun also leaves their home, determined to find her daughter and protect her at all costs. The 5th season is a story about systematic oppression. Oppression is not a side effect of the plot. It's not this bonus social commentary that's tacked on through lofty metaphors and whatnot. Systematic oppression is the whole story. Everything in this society is aimed towards keeping orojins face down in the mud, and it begins with their very histories, their mythologies, their belief systems. This story explores how those who survive and those who have the power are the ones who shape history to fit whatever narrative they want. In the Stillness, there's something called stone lore, which is basically seen as the law or as the Bible, and there are these verses that are incomplete or obscured, but that seem to paint orojins as dangers to mankind and as animals that need to be controlled and broken. This ideology is so common and so pervasive, it's taught to every child in every school. So this idea that orojins are inherently lesser, that they're not quite right or whole or human is inescapable because the internalization of that message begins before children can even fully parse through those concepts. The acceptance of their own inferiority is practically built into their very development. And it's not uncommon for young orojins to live in constant fear of being killed for what they are. If orojins display signs of becoming feral, if they present an imminent danger to the population, or if they seem to lose control over their powers for even a second, it's perfectly acceptable to kill them. Everyone knows it, and some of the characters in this story are slowly coming to realize that this system only works because so many people, including themselves, are already compliant with the idea that orojins are expendable. According to the histories, it's always been this way, and it always will be this way. That is a powerful deterrent. That is something that's almost impossible to extract from yourself once it's been internalized. Everyone in the Stillness has come to accept it. They willingly turn a blind eye to it, and that's part of the story. The horror of realizing you've accepted your own death before it even happens, that somewhere along the line you were taught to accept the unacceptable. And guardians make sure to exert this fear over their orogenic charges at every turn, and they make sure that orojins never forget that they are only alive because no one has killed them yet. One of the most chilling passages happens when one of the characters, Damaya, tries to resist her guardian, and he says to her, "Never say no to me. Orojins have no right to say no. I am your guardian. I will break every bone in your hand, every bone in your body, if I deem it necessary to make the world safe from you. This is elementary. This is what all orogenic children grow up knowing to be a universal truth. And I'm really hoping that this is starting to sound familiar because it's really not that far off. And what's more, generally speaking, orogines are taught to aspire to the fulcrum, where they're essentially trained to do whatever they're told, and they're taught to like it. Even the most resentful orogine is taught to rely on the system of the fulcrum, to believe that their worth is tied to their success in this system, that if they just learn control, if they earn their place, if they climb up in the ranks, they will finally receive the respect they deserve, that they will finally be seen as worthy. Orogines are conditioned from day one to crave acceptance and success as defined by someone else's standards. Just being an orogine and being who they are is not enough. And the crazy thing is, even if orogines are far removed from this system and the fulcrum itself, they will still measure their own self-worth against it. That's how much power it has. But the truth is, orogines are only allowed to succeed so much. Even with experience, even after taking on a ton of government jobs, even as they excel through the ranks, they are still treated as lesser. They're called derogatory names, they're treated with disrespect and fear, they're still killed, and they're forced to breed with one another so that they can bring even more young orogines into this system. That's the thing. Everyone is more than willing to accept an orogine's work, to use their abilities and to benefit off of their orogeny. But orogines are only seen for what they can do and never acknowledged for who they are. That difference spans chasms and planets and generations. It's deeply ingrained in a system that's built to perpetuate itself. This is a society that was created to ensure that orogines know their place, know not to look beyond it, so that they stay ignorant and so that they can't even imagine a world where it's not this way, where the idea of spaces that were created for them and with them in mind are an impossibility. The challenge of breaking that mindset apart, of undoing that deep emotional and mental damage, is what this story is all about. It's about what happens when you decide not to look the other way. If you don't know what it's like to live your life every day looking over your shoulder, if you don't know what it feels like to be force-fed ideologies, images, and every shred of consumable media that perpetuates the idea that you are lesser, if you have never internalized that message and fought against the urge to hate yourself or question yourself, if you have never fantasized about how it must feel to be normal, if you don't have to worry about the fact that if you were to die in the street today, it would be rationalized away by the idea that it would have happened at some point anyway, then you live a damn good life, and you need this book. It's for everyone. It's for people who can't even begin to imagine what I just described, and it's for people like me who have to live with the weight of that sitting on their shoulders every damn day. The 5th season is validating, it's empowering, it's terrifying, it's incredible. It's a story about having the strength to reclaim that which has been forcibly taken from you, about having the strength to embrace your power and be content with yourself, about having the strength to admit that you are afraid every day, but you are more afraid of becoming yet another victim of a system that doesn't work. And I want to make it abundantly clear, that's just the beginning. That's just scratching the surface, because if that's all this book was, it would be yet another simple story about oppression and subsequent rebellion, but it's not. N.K. Jemisin obfuscates that at every turn. She complicates it so many times over and forces you to confront the fact that merely acknowledging that something is wrong is the easy part. It's what unfolds afterwards that's truly extraordinary and unforgettable. Anyways, I could talk about the 5th season for hours on end, but I think it's obvious that I gave this book 5 stars, and it will always be 5 stars. So those were some of my thoughts on the 5th season. If you have anything to add to the conversation, or if you have any thoughts on this book, please feel free to share them with me in the comments down below. But that is everything I had for this review/discussion today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.